I think it's with our BYU Idaho accounts. We don't have the time limits.
Yeah, I switched mine too to my BYUI, so
All right, we are now recording.
Okay, so are there any, before like I pick some questions to maybe go over, are there any questions that have stood out to you that you guys want to talk about of the list of questions that are on that assignment, the Zoom Effectively Advocating Online? If there isn't, then I'll just kind of pick one and we can kind of discuss it.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Okay. All right, so.
Actually, I did have a question. It's on the Effectively Advocating Online page, and it showed the picture of the mother of three, and she's wearing the pro-life t-shirt, and she's holding the Chick-fil-A cup, and she's standing in front of a Hobby Lobby. And the question is, what is she trying to communicate? And do we feel, or do I feel after viewing the picture, is it in line with what we've learned about effective advocacy on social media? Now, again, I am not on social media. I don't use it. I don't have anything to do with it other than my wife showing me an occasional post or an occasional information. What is she trying to communicate? I'm assuming Hobby Lobby is pro-life and that Chick-fil-A is pro-life, or that people think Chick-fil-A is pro-life because they're closed on Sundays and everybody calls it religious chicken. But I've never seen anything where Chick-fil-A has come out and posted anything saying we're pro-life, we're advocating that you don't do these things. So share with me, educate me.
So as far as I know, Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby both advocate for families. And they're pro-life and anti same-sex marriage, that type of thing. So I think what she is saying is these companies support what I support, and I'm going to support them. That's what I got out of it. But
yeah, that's news to me.
We're like banning them or boycotting them.
Yeah, that's news to me because I was kind of confused too because I didn't know what the positions were of Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby. I got the t-shirt, but nothing else. So yeah, that's great.
Okay.
And they're closed on Sundays, right? Is that
Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday? I don't know about Hobby.
I don't know if Hobby Lobby. Yeah, but I haven't ever actually seen anything from Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby. I'm sure if we did some investigating, we could find out. But just from people boycotting them, saying this is what Hobby Lobby says and this is what Chick-fil-A says. So, anyway, that's what I got from that.
Okay.
And I showed it to my husband, and that's what he thought too. So how are you guys dealing? Because I don't do social media much either. I mean, I have a Facebook account. So I'm thinking, do I need to open an Instagram and a Twitter account and everything to do this class?
I posted to Sister Hubert about that because I'm not using social media, and she said any platform or any advocacy that we desire to use or we strive to use is acceptable to her as long as we're seeking to go out and increase our advocacy in any way possible. And so what I selected, and I posted it in my discussion board, is I got a buddy of mine who he's, I guess, a theologian or a student of religion, and he's very, very active in scripture, in reading his Bible, and constantly being involved in something on a religious sense. And I've noticed over the last 12 years that he and I have known each other and have communicated, he'll very often sprinkle his text communications with me with a religious reference or with a scriptural quote. Just 6 months ago, when we found out we were pregnant with number 8, which everybody at work is losing their mind over the fact that we have 8 kids. And, you know, they say, well, congratulations, I guess, you know, it's just like, no, there's no I guess about it. We're happy to have, you know, a healthy child and to be bringing another one of God's spirit children to the earth. When I communicated with him and he and his wife have 4 kids right now, and I don't think they're done either yet. But he sent back the quote from Psalm 127, 4 and 5, and right in there, he immediately linked to it because he's got the program on his phone where he can do all these different things. And it says, children are a joy to a man in his youth, like arrows in the quiver of a man. And I mean, he made me feel better by sharing something scriptural, not just his personal opinion. And so I've challenged myself to go back this week and over the future weeks and to identify several scriptural references from the New Testament and the Old Testament, not just the Book of Mormon, that refer to different things that we have challenges with, whether they be life, depression, challenges, family, employment, anything, finances, anything, and to kind of have those available to me so that when I communicate with someone who could use a boost or an uplift in some way, I can share that link or that scripture to kind of get them looking to the Bible and God as a source of where to turn for help, instead of just going to Facebook and seeing that 18 people have liked this post or whatever,
Yeah, I don't know about you. I had to email Sister Hubert, I think is her name, just because of the challenge that President Nelson gave. I feel really bad like going on and posting something that's against what the prophet said. And so I haven't done it yet. I believe she messaged me back, but I can't remember what. I haven't looked at it yet. But anyway, so I felt like that was a little contradicting. I wasn't really sure how to do that. So
I kind of felt like that too, but then I was talking with someone in another class, and she said he did put I don't remember him saying anything, but she said that he did put like a caveat or something in there, because I was talking to someone yesterday, and she said that she uses Facebook to like communicate with her family in Peru. Social media is how she communicates with them. And so I think I don't know. And I'm going to have to listen to it again, because I don't remember him saying anything about, he just said a social media fast, right? I don't remember him saying anything about except for.
Well, Sister Hubert comment, and I don't think it was you, Emily. I think it was somebody else who asked a question about the 10-day fast. I think it might have been Chloe. And Sister Hubert responded with the specific fact that, okay, for this week, create the post that you could make, just don't make it because you're fasting for 10 days. And then when your fast is over in 10 days, you can go ahead and post the fast, but you can make it, prepare it, and just don't click submit or whatever it is, and then take a screenshot of it and save it with your classmates so they know what you're going to do. And we lost Shauna, it looks like.
Yeah, she was her, I don't know if it was her connection or something, wasn't, at least on my end, it was kind of splotchy. Oh, she may be coming back. Okay, so let's kind of move on. One question that kind of stood out to me is, why have we witnessed such acceleration in technology in these last days? And why do you think the Lord might be behind it? You guys have any thoughts on that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
Sorry. What I got out of it is that all of these advancements are part of the Lord's hastening his work in the latter days. Like, technology's out there for a reason. It's a way for us to communicate, but we got to choose if we're going to use it for good or bad. And so there's lots of advancements that we've been able to see in the church, like LDS.org, LDS tools. There's so much good that we can use for it. And I feel like technology is helpful in helping the Lord with his work. One of the talks to sweep the earth as with the flood by David A. Bednar, he shared something about President Kimball from 1974. And Spencer W. Kimball said, "I believe that the Lord is anxious to put into our hands inventions of which we laymen have hardly had a glimpse. With the Lord providing these miracles of communication, and with the increased efforts and devotion of our missionaries and all of us and all others who are sent, surely the divine injunction will come to pass. For verily the sound must go forth from this place into all the world, and unto the uttermost parts of the earth. The gospel must be preached unto every creature. And I think it's through our everyday devices that we are able to do this. So that's kind of what I got out of it.
I got that too, and also just like I was amazed that like Brigham Young said stuff without all the tools that were going to become available, and President McKay said beyond our imagination, and that was like in 1966 or something. And President Hinckley mentioned it too, which not only solidified to me that they were prophets, because all that has come to pass, but just that the Lord really is hastening his work, like Emily said. I mean, there has to be a way to reach the whole world, and this is a way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I was thinking about this a little while ago of just how you look even like 50 years ago, in order to communicate to someone, like you would have to make a phone call or you'd go to someone's home to try to get a message out. But now like you have texting or emailing, like that's so fast you can communicate with anyone around the world within seconds. And, you know, even the way the church has done things, like not knowing, you would be given a piece of paper to know what everyone's phone numbers were. Now you just look that up on LDS Tools, or like the hymn books or the scriptures, like everything is right there. And same with family history. There'd be no way to do family history if there would be no way to do family history like you can now. So anyway, so anyway, it just made me just think about that. And anyway, but then you look at the bad side, there's just so much riffraff that makes me so sad, and a lot of different voices that come, and a bunch of different websites, but then there's also so much good too. And so, you know, there wouldn't be any way to spread the gospel and to do those good things like temple work and like getting to know people in your ward with ministering if it weren't for technology.
Satan has to pick up his pace too, and he's doing it with the internet and everything, just like Christ is hastening his work, which is very sad that Satan is able to use those tools and people are so taken in by them. Like my ex-husband was addicted to pornography, and so we've been divorced for 20 years, but so you know how far technology's come even in 20 years. But even back then, we didn't have the internet when we first got married, and then with the internet, that was just so much more of a temptation for him. I mean, it was easier for him to avoid buying a magazine or whatever. But with the internet, it was just so much harder.
Oh, that's so sad.
He got better. Took losing his family, but he got better, which is good. I'm glad that his children got to see the atonement work in his life. So.
I think that goes along with what Elder Ballard said, that we need to make our devices our servants and not our masters. So we shouldn't let technology be our master and let it control us. We need to let it be a servant. And just like Andre was saying about his friend that posted something good on social media, we need to let the way we use technology be a servant to us and help us to help other people.
And I think that's the key, Emily. I think that's the whole key, is making it work for the Lord's purposes and not for ours.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Should we move on to the next question? Does anyone else have anything to say?
I think we covered that one pretty good.
Okay. All right. So the next one that I want to go over is, what connections can you make between Elder Bednar's principles and the 4 wings of the dragonfly? What do you guys think about that?
So I thought they matched up pretty well, because like if you're being consistent, that's kind of your focus, is your consistent message, like Elder Bednar said. And then grabbing attention, if you grab it in the right way, it can be edifying and uplifting. And then those were, and taking action could fit with that too, but those were the only 2 connections I really saw. You know, I probably could have thought on it more and come up with others, but.
I think one thing for me that really stood out was the point of being authentic. Like, it has to be something that's meaningful and that's coming from your heart. You can't promote a message without having a purpose and without having that deep desire to do something good. And so I feel like that kind of, with what Elder Bednar said in the 4 wings of the dragonfly, with it, I can't remember the first wing, or focus, having a focus. Like, but when we have a focus, we also need to be authentic and be sincere.
Yeah, the one that I liked the most of his, and it's kind of a weird thing, I guess. I typically get hooked into the parts that are easy to understand, but it was the respecting intellectual property. Somebody else posts something, or somebody else has a picture or a piece of artwork or a story or something, and maybe it's just because in the last 6 years of going to BYU Idaho, there's so much talk about plagiarism and people not using their own work and even plagiarizing themselves when you're using material that you've used previously for another class that you use again without recreating it or completely redoing it from a different perspective or a different viewpoint. You're actually plagiarizing yourself, and that's a violation of the honor code, and that we shouldn't be doing that. That what we're sharing or what we're posting needs to be correctly attributed to where it happens to come from, if it's coming from a different source, or it needs to be original content that's coming from us. You know, all too often, you know, you'll hear about people sharing information like, oh, well, you know, I said this. And it's like, well, no, you didn't say that. Somebody else said that at one point in time. And it's legally and historically attributed to them. But let's realize where our sources come from. A buddy of mine at church, he actually, they made this quote jar for a boss that was retiring. And they had put in quotes from, you know, Harry Truman, Teddy Roosevelt, George Washington, Abe Lincoln. And he took it as a challenge, and he wrote out like 20 or 30 quotes that came from prophets and presidents of the church. Gordon B. Hinckley, Thomas S. Monson, different one, and put them in this jar. And the whole idea was that he would take one out and he would read it, and oh, that's fantastic, you know. And he wasn't a member of the church, the boss that was retiring, but the messages that we read from our prophets are so well written, so well thought out, and the ideas that they communicate are ones that so many people would be benefited by following their guidance or following their sayings. They don't even realize that it's a religious concept, you know, being better today, you know, or what is it that one of my favorites that Elder Packer used to say is the study of doctrine will improve behavior better than the study of behavior will improve behavior, you know. And the whole concept of that is that as we study the true doctrines as we study what Heavenly Father would want us to become, we improve who we are rather than studying why we are who we are, because that doesn't really change anything. That just explains why we are who we are. It doesn't show us what we need to do to change who we are. So I think that these 4 principles that Elder Bednar shared are truly in line with the dragonfly effect. It's just that one comes from a scriptural reference where Elder Bednar is being told the truth from Heavenly Father to share it with us, and the other one is coming from a secular reference of this is what we've studied in how people react to things and how people can be motivated to do these things. But again, it's lacking that scriptural concept that people are going to reject because it's coming from God, and they don't necessarily believe that good things come from God. They believe that good things come from people who study good things, you know.
Truth is truth, no matter where you find it. And truth is truth, whether you believe it or not, too. I had a question about that, respecting intellectual property, because even so, the photo that I used on mine was from a free photo place, and I didn't see any credit on the photo or anything. So do you have to credit those ones that come from free photo places, or?
I didn't think so. I would ask Sister Hubert to be sure.
Because obviously we're probably going to be using photos that aren't like ones that we took ourselves or whatever. But.
Right, because things like clip art from Microsoft Office or Microsoft Publisher, those things are obviously intellectual property that they've already sold. They've put out there with an understanding that people are going to use this material to do things. And I think when you have a free photo place like that, you have the same thing. They're posting that information or those resources as something that's available free of intellectual charge. They just don't have the little caveat like we have in the hymnal or on the church website where it says all this material is free to use, you know, based on intellectual property or permissions, etc.
Okay, yeah, because I'm like, I definitely don't want to break any rules doing that. In fact, I was even going to ask Sister, because I had to do a blog for my marriage class. Some of you probably have taken that class already too, and I was going to ask her, can I use some of that material from my blog, as long as I say it's from my blog that I made earlier or something.
Right.
Yeah, because like I've noticed even like when say Elder Bednar quotes himself from a different talk that he's given, he acknowledges that I said this in this talk.
Yep.
Before, so. And they all do that. Yeah.
So, what were some of the strengths and weaknesses of both Elder Bednar's principles and then the 4 wings of the dragonfly, to kind of go off of what we were talking about?
I think the only weakness really is in when we try to grab attention, we might use material that's not actively supporting our goal or actively supporting our message. You know, shock value of something that we could use to grab attention and get people to look at it, but the shock value itself could be offensive to somebody, like in a pro-life situation, you know, obviously, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but pictures of, you know, dead fetuses or dead babies is obviously something that's going to be not necessarily, it's going to grab attention, but it's not going to necessarily make people feel that our cause is one that they necessarily want to get behind, because our actions in promoting that cause may be negative, you know, or may cause them to look at it in a negative way. You know, it's the whole same concept we have with our missionaries going out and sharing the gospel. You know, everybody not everybody, but we want to believe that people are actively looking to hear the gospel, and yet everybody takes it as, oh, they're going to come beat me up and down with the Book of Mormon, and they're going to just do nothing but preach and talk. And that's why I think messages now are more about establishing just a line of communication with people and getting to the point where you can talk to them, and letting the Holy Ghost do the teaching by itself, and to do the testifying of, this is just who we are. We're an honest, we're caring, loving people who are out here trying to change the world and make it a better place. We're not here to shove a Book of Mormon down your throat and make you read it and then change your life and do all these different things to you. We're just here to be here as a resource if you're looking for one to share. So that's the only negative that I really got in reading it and trying to think about it, was just the way we present it could obviously cause an issue with what we're trying to accomplish.
I didn't even think about that. That's a great insight.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I feel like, kind of what you're saying about abortion, for me, sorry, this is kind of personal, but my husband and I have dealt with infertility for about 2.5 years and have gone through 2 miscarriages.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks. And so it's been one of those things, like for me, with our first miscarriage, like we saw like a perfect little baby.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just made me so sad that that's what people are killing, because I could see the eyes, the nose, the fingers, the toes, like you could see everything. And anyway, like for me, the pictures that I took of our baby are so precious. And so sometimes for me, like, I'm sure for other people, it's like so graphic, but to me, that's just so pure. Like, it's never been something that I posted on social media, just because it's like too close to my heart to want to do that. But, that's one of those things that I haven't really thought about, that something like that can be way too graphic and can be something that kind of sways people of like, okay, you didn't need to do that to try to promote your message. Like, you could come out and a more sincere and I don't know. I just felt like that could be a little bit more, I can't think of the word, derogatory. That's not a word.
Derogatory.
Thank you. Derogatory than actually promoting what you're trying to intend. So anyway.
Yeah, and I think thank you for sharing that personal story with us. Sorry you're going through that. It's hard. But I think that, you mentioned in your post about how do you draw that line between getting too personal but still being authentic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a hard thing to do, because like you said, something that might be close to your heart, someone else might be shocked by, or think that it wasn't a necessary thing to say or do or whatever.
And it's like one thing, like, I don't ask for pity, like that's not the intent, but I don't know how to make that not the intent of when it comes to being forever families, or the hope that we'll be able to see our 2 babies that we lost, so anyway, that it's just been something that's kind of hard to balance. Do you guys have any like recommendations for that? I haven't looked at my responses to my post, so sorry if you guys have said something and I haven't looked at it.
I responded to it, but I didn't have a good answer. I just kind of asked my own question in there. So
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what the question is, because I don't know that I've read your post yet. But my wife and I have actually had 3 miscarriages over the last 19 years. And one was quite late in the process. I think we were at 22 months. And it was devastating.
22 weeks?
Sorry, 22 weeks, yeah. She was 2 years old. No, 22 weeks. And it's devastating. Even today, we've had several children since then. And we still hope and pray and look forward to meeting our children in the afterlife. I don't know that there is ever a point where we won't feel sorrowful that we didn't get to meet them now. But there is hope and there is joy that we will eventually get to meet them. And again, I don't know if that has anything to do with your question, but knowing that those promises are ours as long as we are faithful and as long as we do what we're required to do does bring peace.
Definitely. My question was like, how do you post on social media with a certain point and being authentic and personal without being too personal? If that was kind of my question. And because you're not seeking for pity or things like that, like what I was saying earlier, but how do you make it that authentic without making people feel uncomfortable?
I wish my wife was here because I know that she shared, I want to say last year at some point, she shared an experience that had occurred, and it had always been extremely difficult before that because everybody wants to sympathize or wants to try to empathize. And, you know, from her viewpoint, it's if you haven't been through it, just don't even talk to me, you know, basically is the way it comes across. And I understand that feeling because I can't even truly understand where she or where you are coming from in that situation. So in trying to share that information, you almost choose not to share it because you're afraid of how people are going to react, or you're afraid of the way people are going to judge or the way they're going to respond, and that it's going to create more feelings of anger, and you're going to want to snap, you're going to want to yell. And in her case, that didn't happen. And I think we were amazed at the lack of that occurring because it always occurred every other time it had ever been brought up in a social setting or in a public setting or anything, even with family members or with other members of the church, people who should understand, and they still didn't get it and had the ability to make things worse. And yet, in this case, it came across genuine, and there were people that reached out to her that had been in similar situations and basically just said, thank you for putting into words what I haven't been able to do. Thank you for sharing with the world where I was at that time, and I'm going to share this with my cousin or my mom or my husband or my sister, because maybe through your courage, maybe through your words that you posted, they will better understand where I came from or where I was and why I was unwilling to communicate with them because of all these reasons. So I think, Emily, that the only advice that I could offer would be to continue to pray, to continue to seek guidance from Heavenly Father, and when He tells you the time is right to share, you will have the right words to share. Don't force it because you think you need to share. Wait until you know that it's the right time. Because I know with my wife, it was years before she actually put, mind to pen to paper and was able to express herself in a manner where she felt good about what she was expressing.
That's really good advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think to go along with that, I don't know if this is how you guys feel, but when prophets share personal and struggles, I don't know if you guys know, but Elder Holland struggles with depression. And when he openly shares that, it makes me want to connect more. Does that make sense? So when you share more personal stories, that helps other people to connect to you. But just like what Andrea is saying, we got to make sure that we're not sharing those stories when we're not in a good place to share them. If we're doing those stories out of anger. Like if it's still really sensitive to us. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the right time, I guess, to share. So I think it's important to have the Spirit with us. Like when Elder Holland gives his talks about depression, he talks about how to deal with the depression, because he has a Spirit with him when he's giving those talks. So I think it's really important to make sure we take the time to know where our heart is truly at when we're sharing those personal things.
That's also a really good point. And I feel like for him, he's able to empathize because he has gone through that in the past. So it wasn't like dwelling, when he mentioned that in 2013 in his talk, it wasn't just about him. It was kind of so then he can empathize more with others and know that it's a real thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for that advice. That was helpful. Sorry, give me just a second. So thinking of like the dragonfly effect, what evidence was left out that could have helped to further reinforce the argument?
Are we talking about sites or web pages or blogs or posts that we looked at? I was a little confused by the questions and what we were supposed to discuss on some of them.
It sounds, at least the way that the question is worded, it's saying that it's just the dragonfly.
Yeah, there was an actual article link to the dragonfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an article that was written, and I mean, we had the dragonfly body, the dragonfly system, and then, it's called the dragonfly body again, not the dragonfly effect. But in reading the entire article, they talked about, the challenge, the two different donors, people that were looking for the donors, how they went out and they posted the social media and they found the other person. They brought them together and they created all this increase, and they said, okay, we have to identify what we're doing and what we're trying to find out, where we're going. So I thought it was in reference to the article that was written about what they did with the dragonfly effect, that we were going to be discussing the article, and did it truly explain how they accomplished what they set out to accomplish? Did it show each wing of the dragonfly and what they did to accomplish each wing and bring everything together, and whether or not there was information that was lacking in how they put it into effect to accomplish their goal? And I don't think there was anything lacking in the article in the way they discussed it and the way they went out to do it, except for that ultimate goal, and that is when you initially get in touch with people, how do you get them to do more than just say, oh, I want to help, or I'm willing to help, or what can I do? How do you actually get them to do it? You know what I mean? Because you can't just keep calling people every week and go, okay, have you done that yet? Have you done that yet? I think that that's the internal aspect of having the right message. When you have the right message that goes out and grabs them by their heartstrings and makes them actively want to help, that's the goal of getting them to do what you want them to do. We just as an example, we did a whole bunch of service down in Houston for Hurricane Harvey when it came through earlier last year, where we sent people down on weekends. They got together into teams of 20 people and drove down in caravans and did a bunch of help. And we've just had a recent flooding here locally, just 2 towns away that are in the stake right adjacent to our stake. And their stake president sent a message to our stake president last week saying, hey, we're looking for assistance to go out and help people clean out the flooded houses and knock out the wet drywall that's 3 feet down and do all this other stuff. And I got the message from the High Council just on Thursday night while I was at work that they were looking to get people together. And so I worked on Friday trying to communicate with our stake people to get that information out. And we actually managed to have 3 different groups go out this weekend on conference weekend and go to 3 different locations and 3 different houses and help these people, even though they, probably would have much rather have been home watching conference. And I think, again, it wasn't just the concept of, oh, let's go help somebody. It was the concept of our stake president sending a personal message out to everybody that I had already identified, and was able to, because my message had all the information, but I hadn't received any people going, oh yeah, we're going to go help, and then our stake president, with insight from the Lord, took my message that had gone out to everybody and again replied to it and said that, he was likening this opportunity to that given by Brigham Young to the saints to go and rescue those that were outside, on their way to Salt Lake, that, hey, go and rescue these people. Let's do it now, even though it's conference weekend. This is an opportunity for us to go serve. And it was after his message that I started getting this huge influx of people going, oh, how can I go help? Where can I go? When can I get there? Where do I go to look it up? All this other stuff. And I think in turn, again, that was my giving the information out, wasn't necessarily that grasping of a spiritual opportunity for these people. But once my stake president included that in the message and added it to the original concept, it completely changed the amount of people that were willing to go.
Yeah, I think that with that, that they had to get the message to the right people. But I think the fact that it came from friends of those gentlemen who were afflicted with leukemia made it more personal too. Like, this isn't just somebody trying to fight leukemia. This is someone trying to save their friend's life.
Yeah.
So you have to have the right message to the right people from the right people.
Gotcha. I felt like there wasn't really anything left out from the things that they were telling in the Dragonfly Effect book. They implemented all of those four wings to be able to have it be an effective message and for people to act. And I think you're right, Shauna, where I feel like it made it persuasive, like it made people want to act because it was personal and because it was a friend of the people who were, it was friends of the person who was being affected that made people want to act.
And also, I think when they reached out to that ethnic group of South Asians, that people were like, oh, this is going to help all, people like me who aren't getting the help they need.
Mm-hmm.
I think they didn't even, I wouldn't have realized that there was only that small percentage of South Asians or whatever, if they hadn't said that. I think people needed to know, hey, this is going to help people in your home country. This is going to help people here. This is something that's really needed for our community, that specific community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that is spot on. So I haven't done my Facebook post or the blog yet. Have any of you guys done that yet? It sounds like Andre, you did kind of something.
No, I'm identifying, like I said, quotes that I can use and scriptural references that I can start sharing, because I don't have a social media presence to go and use. And as long as I'm currently employed where I am employed at, I'm probably not going to have a social media presence. The opportunity when I retire will exist for me to create one and become one, but as a police officer working for a department that's very strict on its social media guidelines, I've just never created one, never had one, didn't have one before. I mean, it wasn't big until, I mean, I'd been a cop for 5 years before I think MySpace even came out, so I mean, it's not like it's something I got involved in and I just haven't been a part of it. So I'm trying to do my social advocacy more on a personal level, where it's going to be the people that I interact with directly through texting and communication. When I'm hit with an opportunity to share a scriptural reference, I'm going to try to do so. So
then has anyone else done their blog or post on a...
I did a post, and I think Emily did one also.
Yeah.
So I shared my screenshot of it because I did post it on Facebook. But mine was like threats to the family, and then I put choose your battle, but then I realized I didn't make it very clear when my son commented on it. So I went and edited it a little bit, just my comment or my post on it, but not the actual picture. But so I specifically didn't mention things like same-sex relationships or cohabiting, because I have family and friends that do that, that are involved in that. So how do you say what you want to say without, because I don't want to start in the comments part. I don't want to start contention there, because that's not my purpose. So how do you kind of say what you want to say without offending anybody? Because on my Facebook page, I have people from every walk of life. So somebody's going to be offended, probably, no matter what I do. But I don't really want it to get contentious in the comments, because that would defeat the whole purpose.
I feel like you're kind of in a hard spot. For me, I'm not really friends with many people who are non-members because I'm from an LDS community. So, I don't really have a good answer. Because that's just not something that I have really had to think about. But I think if you aren't being confrontational, I don't think you need to say those things specifically. I feel like you can articulate it in a way that is talking about that, but not saying it directly, if that makes sense. And so it's not pinpointing or pointing fingers. It's more of something that you believe and something that you want to advocate for, but not necessarily something that you're trying to be contentious about, because you're not necessarily explicitly saying those examples of threats to the family.
Right. I tried to make them ones that weren't aimed specifically at people, like abuse. I didn't say abusive husbands, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or
I think Emily has
alcoholics or something like that. So
I think Emily had a good concept on it, but also there are people, Shauna, and I happen to be related to one of them, my sister, who they look for the opportunity to be offended, regardless of what you say, regardless of how you say it. I mean, you could be speaking in the vaguest terms. You could be speaking in the most general concept. You could be saying nothing in any way, shape, or form. And it's not even something that she identifies with or she is, but she chooses to go, oh, well, maybe I should be offended for Asian people or homosexuals or same-sex marriage or black people or women or, maybe I should be offended for this minority group of people because you're saying something that in the most offhand way could be taken as offensive by a member of that group. And I'm always like, you could, but you'd be an idiot to do so, because that's not the way it's intended. That's not the way it's being said. That's not the way it's being discussed. And if you're going to always look for the negative, you're always going to find the negative, and that's something that unfortunately there are people in this world that are that way, and we're going to run into them. And I think that's what this class is trying to teach us. This class is trying to teach us how, even in the face of that confrontation, even in the face of that adversity, we can choose to take the high road, and we can choose to still maintain the love of Christ for those around us, and we cannot be pulled down by them into the muck and argue on their level. We can continue to be loving and be open, and to turn their words of anger and hate with words of caring, love, and compassion, to where hopefully, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but next year, next decade, they will in turn have their hearts be softened and realize what they've been doing all along, and come around to where they understand truly what it's all about.
That's a good point. So yeah, I'm not going to be contentious in my comments, but I'm afraid that like just the back and forth between all of the people that see
Right.
it. So does anybody know, is there a way to close a post to comments? Like if it gets that way, can you just say, hey, this is getting out of hand, I'm closing this to
Can you close a Facebook post to comments?
Yeah, you can go in on your settings and just turn off commenting.
Oh, okay.
That way, like, people can't comment at all. But
I want
I
there to be a dialogue, but I don't want it to get contentious.
right. I
So
think
if it does, I can turn it off.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time something that I see, like when other people post certain topics that might be contentious, like something like people will kind of go back and forth with them on it. And the actual like owner of the blog, or like the actual initial poster, just kind of lets them do it, and they don't really comment themselves on it. Like I don't see an issue with that. Like people are going to get contentious no matter what. So you could either let them get their like opinions out, or I guess you could just turn off commenting. But I don't know.
Well, it sounds like they're like, hopefully that kind of helps you, Shauna. I'm not exactly sure, but we're starting to run out of time. Should we go through the summary and then call it good?
So
Sure.
Okay.
All right, I'll go ahead and take over with the summary then. We talked about at the beginning that all of these advancements in technology are part of the Lord's hastening his work in the latter days. And there has to be a way to reach out to the whole world, and it is through our everyday devices that we are able to do this. We have texting, emailing so fast that we can communicate with anyone in the world within seconds. But we also need to understand that just like Christ is hastening his work, Satan is too. And so we need to use technology as our servant and not our master. And we should be a good influence through technology. Andre mentioned that his friend made him feel better by posting something on social media that was scriptural, and it was a positive influence on him. We also talked about how the dragonfly effect and Elder Bednar's principles matched up pretty well. They were both consistent. They both want to grab attention in the right way to be edifying and uplifting. The point of being authentic, and you can't promote a message without having a purpose and that deep desire to do something good. We talked about how we need to respect intellectual property, to not plagiarize, and that what we are posting needs to be correctly contributed to the sources used. We mentioned that the messages from our prophets are so well written and thought out, and as we study the true doctrines, we improve who we are. And we also talked about how truth is truth, no matter where we find it or whether we believe it or not. And we need to make sure that our messages that we share grab attention, but that they are not negative or too graphic. We asked the question, how can we be personal through our posts without being too personal? And we talked about how we need to be genuine and share with the world, and that through our courage of what we post, people will better understand how to seek help, and that we need to not force it and wait until we know when it is the right time to post, and to have the Spirit with us. And we talked about when we initially get in touch with people, how do we actually get people to do it with that goal? And this goes with having the right message to share. The last question we talked about is how do we say what we want to say without offending anyone? And we talked about how we need to not be confrontational, and it should be something more we believe and not trying to be contentious. And if you are always looking for negative, you are always going to find it. We are going to run into those people that want to be negative, but it's important that we, even when we are faced with this confrontation, we choose to take the high road and still maintain the love of Christ, and that we are not pulled down from them, and that we seek with love. We need to continue to be loving and open and turn words of hate and anger with love and compassion.
Great summary. Perfect.
Just as an informational thing, and I'll leave it on the recording so Sister Hubert sees it as well. My work is messing with my schedule. I don't think it's and we're also due to have our baby any day now. We're actually due on the 17th. So I may be at the hospital next week. So Emily, if you can be prepared to run a meeting if necessary, I'll try to communicate with everybody through email and let you guys know what's going on. But hopefully I'll be able to run the meeting again next Wednesday and record it. But after my work schedule changes, which is supposed to be when I come back from maternity leave with the baby in like 3 weeks, I'm going to be working Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. So I'm going to have Sister Hubert put me into a different group. I'm really sorry to have to do it. I didn't choose the schedule change. They're kind of pushing it on me and making me change anyway. And I'm going to miss all of you in this group. Hopefully I'll still get to see you in the discussion boards. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that within the next month, I'm probably going to have to go to a different Zoom group, and I'm going to miss you all. So
we're going to miss you too.
I'll miss you too. Yeah, great insight.
But I'm sure I'll post pictures of the baby when she gets here. So, all right. Anything? Oh, we forgot to start with a prayer. You guys are okay with ending with a prayer? If anybody wants to volunteer, otherwise I'll say it. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you at this time, and we thank you for this opportunity that we've had to come together in this group meeting to share our thoughts and to share our opinions, to discuss ways that we can interact with others and do so in a Christ-like manner, that we may uplift and edify, that we may be a source of light in the world and to those around us. We ask you to keep our families in safety. We ask you to keep them continually blessed. We ask that each of us may continue to hear and listen and apply the words of our prophets in our lives, that we may be improved and we may have the windows of heaven opened up unto us to receive those blessings which we poured out upon us. We thank you again for the restored gospel in our lives, and say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks. Good luck with the baby. Hope everything goes
Thank
well.
you.
Look.
Off recording.